How's everybody doing? Welcome back to New York 101. I'm I Think You Know, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about the history of the Queensboro Bridge. And later in the live play, we'll take a close look at what we built and talk about some changes to the way the city looks in the game. Really excited to show you all of that, but for now, let's dive into the history of this beautiful bridge. The Queensboro Bridge was built in 1909. And unlike the other three bridges that cross the East River, or the major bridges at least, this one is a cantilever bridge. All the other ones are suspension bridges. And what that really means is that instead of those high tension cables supporting the road deck, this truss system supports the road deck and connects it to the various pillars, of which there are four main ones on the Queensboro Bridge. Calling it the Queensboro Bridge, though, might be one of the toughest things about it. I think that is what it is most colloquially known as. However, it has a variety of other names. Informally, it is also called the 59th Street Bridge because it kind of saddles 59th and 60th Street in Manhattan. When it was originally built, it was referred to as Blackwell's Island Bridge, because that was the previous name for Roosevelt Island, which is that long, skinny island in the middle of the East River that runs underneath the bridge. Cool fun fact, there used to be an elevator that you could take as a person or a vehicle and go from the bridge down to the island. At the time, that would be the only way to get vehicles to the island until they built a bridge from Queens to Roosevelt Island decades later. And then finally, the last name for this bridge, the one it was named in 2010, is former New York City Mayor, the late Ed Koch. I didn't get into a ton of research about him for this video. Maybe I'll do that some other time. He's a really interesting figure in New York history, a touch before my time, but definitely someone I'd like to know more about, and maybe you would as well. Now, the bridge itself connects two really important neighborhoods. So it connects Long Island City on the Queens side of the bridge. You're about to say, wait, there's a place called Long Island City? Yes, it's actually the neighborhood. Even though people from Queens and Brooklyn would never call themselves Long Islanders, only people from Nassau and Suffolk counties have the audacity to do that. But, technically, geographically, Brooklyn and Queens are on Long Island. And that's why that southwest corner of Queens is called Long Island City, one of the fastest growing communities in the country and in the city, and a really interesting place. It's obviously still growing and still building, but it's also really doesn't quite feel like a neighborhood sometimes. And then on the Manhattan side, the bridge ends up into two really large neighborhoods. So the Upper East Side, which starts at about 59th Street, is to the north and east of the bridge. I used to live on the Upper East Side. It is a big time hustle and bustle. There's 120,000 people, I think, in that neighborhood alone, which is like the size of a lot of cities in America. And then of course, just south of the bridge, you have Midtown. So this is a really, really heavily trafficked bridge. I've worked in that northern part of Midtown before, and the traffic getting to and from the bridge at rush hour is always absolutely ridiculous, despite this bridge being multiple levels. So you'll see me building behind here both the approaches on the Manhattan and the Queens side, as well as both the upper and the lower deck, using the common Bay Bridge assets that you've seen so many times in Cities Skylines. Yeah, are they a little cliche and overused? Yeah, maybe, but they look fantastic. But there are two decks to this bridge. The interesting thing is how much they've changed over the years. The top level currently has 2 lanes in each direction for cars. But originally, it had 2 pedestrian lanes and 2 elevated subway tracks of the 2nd Avenue line. And you're saying, wait a minute, that's the one they never built, idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. I assure you, they're not the same thing. What they're building now is the IND 2nd Avenue line that's only been partially built to the Upper East Side. But back in the day, they had an IRT 2nd Avenue elevated line, which was one of the many elevated lines in New York that existed just before and during the early days of the subway underground, more traditional subway system in New York that you're probably associating with the city. A lot of those lines were unfortunately torn down. I think the 3rd Avenue elevator was the last one to go down, but both that one and the second were torn down like a little bit early because the city was like, oh, don't worry, we're building a 2nd Avenue line to underground, like you'll have a replacement. And then, they never did until just recently and still haven't finished it. So that was part of the old remnants. So there was a spur of the 2nd Avenue line that would take you from, the northern, that northern part of Midtown and take you over the bridge so you can get to Queens if you needed to then transfer at Queensboro Plaza to something else. On the bottom level of the bridge, however, right now there are 5 lanes of traffic. 3 of those Queens bound, 2 of those Manhattan bound. And the reason why it's unbalanced is that on the northern side of the bridge, there is an additional Manhattan bound lane. That has thankfully been converted. It was converted about 25 years ago into a pedestrian path. The problem with the Queensboro Bridge is that you have one pedestrian lane that carries both foot traffic and cycling traffic. And I've walked over that. It is like kind of terrifying. And there are frequently, unfortunately, accidents where people get in the way of each other and a biker hits a pedestrian or a biker hits a biker. There is a plan in place to convert the southern roadway of the bridge into a pedestrian path so that the northern part can just be a cycle path. New Yorkers have really been clamoring for this. In my opinion, it's ridiculous that you have a bridge connecting 2 major areas, and go look at it on a map. There's like not a lot of other places that you can cross in this area. I mean, you have the tram if you want to get to Roosevelt Island, but the bridge doesn't take you there anyway. And then you have the subway, but there's nothing else above ground for quite a large distance. And it just really is a shame that, the pedestrians and cyclists have to share such a small space while drivers get, 2, 4, 9 lanes of traffic. 9 lanes for cars, 1 lane for both pedestrians and cyclists. I'm sorry, you'll just never justify that to me. And I'm glad the city is changing it, but between the fact that so much is given to cars and that there is no mass transit over this bridge except for bus lines, the bridge carries way less traffic now than it used to, than it was designed for, and also takes up a ton of land space because you're seeing right now on the screen all of these giant overpasses that allow people in Queens to get quickly from the surrounding neighborhood, but really also the Queens Midtown Expressway, or the Long Island Expressway there, that connects to the Queens Midtown Tunnel. It's all the infrastructure here just designed to funnel cars to this bridge. And it makes a lot of the surrounding area a little bit unlivable, which is kind of a shame because it's, like I said, it is a fast growing neighborhood and there are people that do live there. But, sometimes you wonder about their air quality or their overall quality of life with just a stream of cars and trucks cutting through your neighborhood on a daily basis. And that's not unique to Queens. That's unique to a lot of parts of New York and a lot of parts of a lot of cities in this country and others. But I really wish that we would, you'd see the bridge get some different uses at some point. I'd love for a politician to just get a little bit adventurous and think about what else could be. This area is not really short of mass transit options. Overall, to be fair, there are a ton of subway lines in this area, and I'll go into that in more depth in the live play at the end of this video. I recorded that first and I'm recording this now. And one of the other things that I've done recently, I've been building a lot off camera. I got just super addicted again into just basically replacing the subway network. And the reason I'm not really showing it is I want to do something different with that video. So it will come and I will get into it, all the details, and show you everything. But I have to decide exactly how I want to, give that over to you, because I am obviously not releasing videos at the pace that I used to or really can right now, unfortunately. But I'm wondering if I could work with some different ideas and hopefully, get a few different kinds of videos out quicker, maybe things that are shorter and show different things, and then, do more building and more in-game stuff on the live streams, which we'll get back into soon enough. Overall, though, I'm a huge fan of this bridge. I know maybe it doesn't sound like it in the way I've described it so far, but I think it actually, for me, has my favorite views in the city. When I used to live on the Upper East Side, if I was ever out in North Brooklyn or I was out in Queens, this would often be my ride home if I was taking a car. And the views you get of Midtown and Lower Manhattan going over the Queensboro Bridge are nothing short of spectacular. Often framed within that truss structure, and if you're taking that upper deck, it really does look cool. And I know it's maybe sounds hypocritical for me to rail on there being too many traffic lanes and then taking a car over it, but I only take cars over things like that, when it's not rush hour, when it's not crazy traffic. And the only reason we have a rush hour is because we don't find more innovative ways to use the crossings at those critical times. I am not the biggest fan of cars, as I'm sure I've made clear over the time, but they definitely have their place. It's just, it shouldn't be prioritized all the time, everywhere, above everything else, always. Sick and tired of it, to be perfectly honest. The amount of times in New York that I am trying to just get through a crosswalk with the walk symbol, but there's cars blocking the box, or there's cars running a red light, happens pretty much on a weekly basis to me going to work. And that's just not fair. I mean, if it's happening to me, how often it is happening to other people, and how many injuries and deaths are happening because of it. I really do wish, and not that they'll ever see this, but call on the city and Mayor Adams to just do better. De Blasio didn't do enough, didn't really fulfill enough promises there, and then Adams and Ydanis Rodriguez right now are just not cutting it for me and for New Yorkers. It's a shame. I hope it gets better, but I'll believe it when I see it, certainly. Just finishing up some of the detailing here on the bridge. What you're seeing behind you is all of the crazy, what are they called? Like, I don't know, like roadways, like they're loops that take you from the ground up to the bridge. The way that you get on the bridge around here is really weird in general. And we'll talk about that a bit more in the live play as well. I kind of go into and show you how that all works. But this has been great. Thank you all so much for being here. Stick around because the live play is coming up in just a little bit. And then there'll be probably a really nice cinematic at the end as well. You should check that out too. Stick around. Back here in the live play, I'll first apologize if you hear any crazy whistling noises in the background. We're having some storm here in New York right now. But look at how nice this looks. And your first thought is probably, well, it looks a little bit different, and it should. In between me recording the time-lapse footage for this episode and all of this for the live play, the game was having a little bit of a slowdown, and a few of my mods were kind of acting up and telling me that they were conflicting. I have that mod report that helps, the compatibility report that helps you understand everything. And I kind of did a bit of a deep dive and removed a whole lot of mods, removed post-process FX, Sunshafts, Ultimate Eye Candy, a bunch of others, and added in Play It and Fog Controller, but really dug deeper into using Render It. So you'll notice that my colors are a little bit different. I've actually changed the theme. Just with the new color settings and the new mods, I thought this theme looked a little nicer. I think it still needs a little bit of work, especially from this like back view here. The sun angle is not quite right. I'm getting some strange colors, but from the front, especially if we take a quick jump over here to the heart of the city, I think this looks really nice. On an upcoming live stream, we'll have to maybe take a look at it and tweak it a little bit, but I'd love to know what you hear down in the what you think about it down in the comments below. What we built today, of course, is the Queensboro Bridge, the 59th Street Bridge, the Ed Koch Bridge, whatever you want to call it. Any of those names are acceptable. On the Manhattan side here, as we spoke about, I'm sure, relatively simple. I still need to go back and do the intersection marking tool work here, and I think I have a few roads I want to replace and changes I want to make, but since this area of the city is not going to get built up too much, I won't, we're not going to spend an episode, I'll probably do this off camera or never, most likely, since, there's a million and one things we could work on here, of course, as always. But I did off camera do a lot more of the Queensbound side. So I did build out a few of, and just the way this works, and I'm recording this first, and I'm sure I talked about this during the time lapse, but just such a complex interchange to create here. But I did finalize getting this outside slip lane, the outside lane of the roadway, down to where it ends, and did, use traffic manager and intersection marking tool to kind of, give that a basic look right there. But I also took the lower level of the bridge and really dragged that out and spent way too much time looking at Google Maps, like, tweaking and moving and flipping and trying to get the angles just right so I could see what the heck was going on down here. I mean, really, I should just like hop on the subway and like just videotape it and then like refer to that, but that sounds like even more work that I don't have time for. So did the best I could here. It's a really interesting way that, a whole bunch of things become one route up north with, a lot of lanes here that end up like, it goes from 4 to 3 to 2, which feels really nice in Cities Skylines. Whenever I do that, I feel like I'm Biffa for a quick moment, like I'm doing lane mathematics. And then the outbound road here, just, it splits off up here, but it also splits off down here. And then you have this road where this actually cuts over the eastbound lanes to become part of the westbound lane. So these two lanes here interconnect right here. I guess I could show you that. Yeah, so I don't think I've fully done all this work yet, but it's pretty much ready to go. And the reason for that, and we'll talk a little bit here about where the future is going to bring us. But I really want to extend the subway network into Queens, since we've built a lot of the subways up here, and I kind of truncated the 53rd and 59th Street line, 60th Street line rather. And I do want to bring those over into Queens. Of course, you have many lines in Queens. Not really many. Actually, like Queens has like the least amount of subway lines like per capita in New York, not including Staten Island, of course. Queens needs more subways if anything, but this area is pretty dense. So the way it works is there's a tunnel like just north of the bridge here underneath the water, which pops out right around here, joins the Queensboro Plaza station, and then goes north. You can see the outline of the elevated tracks right here. That's the Astoria line, the N and the W trains as they are today. We'll definitely build those at some point in the future. We won't go all the way, but I at least want to get, like, I think the next stop's like here somewhere. We'll build like 1 or 2 stops up, I think, into Astoria, but not too far. We won't build a lot around there. Just want to get the transit running. Want to make the transit make sense. The other train, of course, in this area is the 7 train, which we've already built some of. Right now it ends right here, and I just have it kind of like hacked into a depot, but what it actually is it pops out from the ground right at the end of the station. This is the Hunter's Point station, and then comes above ground here. You can see the outline. It has a stop at Court Square, and then loops around and meets up with the NW trains at Queensboro Plaza. But there's also a Queensboro station underneath here that you can't see because those trains are all buried, but that's where you have the R train, the M, the E. I'm probably forgetting one. Yell at me down in the comments. And those trains eventually run, well, they start to run down Northern Boulevard here, and then eventually become the Queens Boulevard line, which is, I don't know if the Queens Boulevard line is busier than the Flushing line, the 7 is. I'll have to look that up. If I remember, I'll pop it onto the screen. If not, you can do your own research. Or I'll talk about it when I eventually get to the subways. I'm sure I'll do my own research then. Anyway, I really can't wait to do more of this, and I really do like the way that it came out. And since the simulation is running, I will zoom in the street level real quick and show you what was built off camera building-wise. And this is what I think is so cool about this area in Long Island City, is that this whole area right here, kind of where you see these industrial buildings, it is very industrial. It's just like warehouses and small businesses, and maybe I think down here somewhere, there's like a FedEx depot, and USPS is a big facility, and it's just a place. There's the place around there somewhere that like stores all the food carts that you use in Manhattan during the day. And Queens is a lot of that. A lot of taxi depots, a lot of the things you don't want right in Midtown Manhattan, but you need really quick access to. It's right here. But in the last 10, 20 years, and continuing to accelerate now, this area has been growing like crazy. So I built one. This is about 150 meters tall skyscraper in Long Island City, apartment building, and that's just the first. There's a whole bunch of others in this area, and just recently the tallest building in Queens was surpassed, and it's going to be surpassed again in coming years, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's more times after that. New York is not building enough housing, Long Island City is. And I can't wait to build more of it and see this whole area really come to life. We're down here to 166,000 people after removing the realistic population mod. With all the mod changes, everything's moving much smoother now. My recording process is back to normal. I want to do some shorter episodes. I want to do some different things. I'm sure I'm going to get around to it at some point. I'm very excited to get my desk into its final location so I can really get my setup right and make sure that the audio is back to normal, sounding like I really want it to. And we'll be golden. So thank you all so much, as always, for sticking around today. Appreciate your time, as always. This has been great. I'll see you soon. Bye.